Rob, why are you here and what do you think of the Syrian revolution? You can introduce yourself please.
Well, I came down to support the people of Syria because from what I can see the Syrian revolution is actually foreign. It's another created problem like Libya, Tunisia and Egypt, and it's my belief that the whole region will suffer if the Syrian government is overthrown and replaced with jihadis. I mean, the groups can't even cooperate amongst themselves. How are they going to run a government? So people are complaining outside of Syria about Bashar al-Assad. There's an old saying in the West, it's better the devil you know. At this point, Libya is a hellhole for anybody. And it's the same people involved in Syria that the West took to Libya. So I've got friends in the region and their security and their safety is important to me as well as all of the innocent people. And so if the government there is toppled, what will replace it, we don't even know, but it's not going to be good. So it will be a problem for everybody in the region, and it's my belief that the Western powers are creating jihadi states for the next major war in the region, so that we'll have another round of wars between the Arabs and the Israelis. So it's a case of the Syrian front has been the quietest front the Israelis have had. Since the Yom Kippur War in '73, they've had no trouble with Syria virtually. So Syria being a very powerful country would be very useful if you're going to want to wipe out Israel. If the secular government's not doing it, it'd be good to replace it with religious fanatics. And of course also Syria is an ally of Russia, an enemy of the West. They're an ally of China, enemy of the West, an ally of Iran, enemy of the West. And if Syria was deposed and became a US client state, then that's yet another base to the south of Russia. So there's many benefits for the West, the Crusader powers, and there are no benefits for Syria or the Middle East.
What do you think of the president of Bashar al-Assad? What do you think of him? What do you think of his government? Do you reckon is he like what they say as a dictator? Or what do you think from as an ex-army soldier in the Australian army?
I don't know much about Bashar al-Assad myself. I haven't been to Syria. And of course the media in the West is slanted to paint him in the worst possible light. Same as they did with Muammar al-Gaddafi. He was a madman and a dictator and all those sort of things, as they claimed. But from what I read, the people wanted a change, and Bashar al-Assad said he'd do it gradually, and he'd been doing it, and it wasn't good enough for the people who wanted to topple him. What I do know is that Syria is stable. Well, it was until recently. It was stable, it was secular, and it was doing very well, and the same can't be said for whoever's going to replace it. If the jihadis succeed and overthrow the Syrian government, whoever takes over will not be a Bashar al-Assad, it'll be another one like he's running Libya.
What do you have a message for the Australian people and for the American people, for the whole wide world as an Australian? What do you have a message for them?
Well, I would say to all of the Westerners that if you think the Crusades are a period in history that's gone, you're wrong. The same crusading powers never stopped. They created all of the nations in the Middle East after the First World War. They made the agreements during the First World War, mainly France and Britain. They created states from nowhere like they did in Europe so that they could play the different cultural groups, ethnic groups, religious groups off of each other. And the result of doing that in Europe was the Second World War. The result of doing it in the Middle East has been how many wars with Israel? And so I think that there's another major war coming. And I think that this is what's coming, or this is what's behind it, is they're trying to ring Israel with her next enemies. And it doesn't benefit the Israelis, it doesn't benefit the Arabs, but it does benefit the Crusaders. So I would say to the Westerners don't believe what your media is telling you. I mean, they lie about things that happen in our own countries. There's a lot of scandals on at the moment about the media lying and the media helping the security services. Why would we trust them? And we don't trust them at home, and yet we trust them to tell us the truth about people overseas. And of course the Middle East is a region most Westerners know very little about. They don't know the difference between a Turk and a Kurd and an Arab. And of course Syria has got a lot of Kurdish people, Arabs, all sorts of people in it. And so they just see it on the TV news and think, okay, fair enough. So I would say switch off your television, do your own research. And if you don't want your sons and your grandsons and your daughters and your granddaughters to die, then stop supporting the Crusaders. All they brought in the Middle Ages was death, and that's what they're going to bring again.
Is it alright to say your full name and what's your next job, please?
Sure, it's Rob Halford, and I was an armoured vehicle crewman in the Australian Army.
No worries. Thank you very much.
No worries.